Good evening and welcome to Mental Health Matters After Hours with me, Dr Audrey Tang. This is the show where we take a deep dive into all things mental health and well-being. We've got a very special episode today. We are welcoming back guest Johnny Lawrence. He is a coach, he focuses on self-development, and he's also shared his personal story with us in the past. He has released a documentary on his experiences of growing up, and it is called The Slavery of Addiction. And he and the director are going to be joining us today to talk about that. Let's take a look at the trailer.
Does it feel alright? Just
yeah. It's like a like a thousand memories come back all at once, you know?
So, where would you like to start this story?
Well, I suppose what's most important is that this isn't everyone's experience of addiction. This is mine. And I suppose if you want to know where to start, we have to start with the reasons why I became addicted.
What an exciting show we've got tonight. We have director Ryan Mackfall and we've got Johnny Lawrence joining us again. We've had Johnny on the show before. Now, today is particularly important for both of you because this is about the documentary that you've released on Johnny's early experiences. We've just seen the trailer of The Slavery of Addiction. And so, Johnny, let's start with you. Why is it so important for you to share your story in the form of a documentary?
Well, hello, and thanks for having me back on. It's always a pleasure, absolutely. Well, really and honestly, I think Ryan would agree, it never really started as a documentary. That wasn't the original intention. We had originally set out to mark my 4-year anniversary by making some sort of short form content for social media. And Ryan, he's quite a connected guy, and you know he can't just make a little simple thing. He said, "Right, I've got some connections. Let's use the local university. Let's do this. Let's do that." And I was like, "Cool, go for it." Not having any idea what to expect. And then I turn up on the day that we agreed, and there's this really, really big studio, and there's this spotlight on this chair, and Ryan's like, "Welcome," and I'm like, okay, something feels a little bit different about this, you know. And then we filmed. I think I'm right in saying about an hour's worth, maybe a bit more than that, of content. Ryan asked me questions. We'd already sort of had a conversation about it previously, and at the end we looked at each other, and he said, "I think we might have something a little bit more than we thought." And I was like, "Yeah, I think we might do too." And it kind of took shape from there, really.
I love that. I love that. And actually, let's start with Ryan first on this. What are the key messages that you want your viewers to take from watching this documentary? And we'll see if they're the same as Johnny's, actually.
Yeah. First, thanks for having me. I think for me, when Johnny came to me with his story and we had our initial conversation, I was incredibly moved by the story and obviously Johnny's bravery to talk about it, because you know, mental health obviously is something that the human race is still kind of grasping and grappling with, and I think although a lot of people say, you know, they're for it, the actions kind of speak differently. So Johnny is really living by his ethos, and when he came to me and we discussed it, you know, we were originally, like Johnny said, going to do a very short film, but it was just impossible to do the story justice in that format. So I did have an inkling before we started, but you never know when you're interviewing different interview subjects. But Johnny brought so much incredible knowledge, and his way of communicating it was, I think it was in a way that I think I knew that a lot of people would connect to it. So we, the film, once we stepped out the interview, I knew that we had something pretty special on our hands. So, and for me, my audience is from a completely different world, because I work largely in the music industry, and I'm at the beginning stages of my career as a feature film director. And it was a new audience on Johnny's side, but I feel like mental health needs to be discussed widely. There should be, it's kind of like no holds barred kind of thing. Everyone needs to discuss it, whether they're male, female, whatever they identify as. And I think especially men. So for me, it was, I didn't know what to expect. But the response so far seems to be overwhelmingly positive. So, I think Johnny's storytelling skills matched with mine have created something that, that is clearly connecting with people on quite a deep level.
Absolutely. And also it's to do with being sober after all of that experience. I think that comes out to me as well. So, Johnny, what for you do you want people to take away, and why is that so important, especially today?
I got quite a few things that I wanted for people to take away. The first one was, don't hate your addiction. I just don't. I feel that very little good has ever come from hating anything.
Yes.
Being completely honest, and it might be a bit of a stretch for people that are deep into their addiction, but there can come a point, I believe, where you can become quite thankful for it, for keeping you alive through them hard. I was asked by my therapist, if you hadn't had your addiction, what then? Good question. I don't know the answer, obviously, but I can't imagine it would have been a very good one. So that's the first one. And again, I'm using my own experiences here. I'm not saying this is how everybody feels, but I've found that a lot of people feel this way, that your addiction might be your way of outsourcing your emotional regulation. Our emotions are the ways that our soul speaks to us and makes demands and tells us how we feel about things, which then dictates our behavior ultimately. So, if we're outsourcing that to an addiction, and again, it doesn't matter what you're addicted to to some degree, then we're never really going to be making decisions for ourselves and living the life that we want to live. We're going to be feeling like we're at the mercy of life, and that's a pretty terrifying idea, I think.
Yeah, it's letting life control you, like addictions control us as well.
Yeah, it's like being caught in a riptide in the sea. You feel completely helpless to life, which I would argue is an element of depression in a sense.
It's very true.
And then I feel like we cannot make permanent decisions with temporary emotions. And when we are in addiction, we have these very temporary emotions that feel very, very powerful, very, very demanding. And we do things, say things, take actions that ultimately we can end up regretting. So that's a bit of a cycle as well. And I'm not saying you're not responsible or accountable for your actions. I'm just gaining an understanding of it, from a more helpful perspective. And then it's not about what you're addicted to. A lot of people obsess over what they are addicted to. They obsess over alcohol, drugs, food, sex, gambling, when all that does is place a real intense focus on it, which means that if you're trying to not do the thing, you will probably end up doing the thing because that's all you're thinking about. And that's all you're talking about. You kind of got no choice because you've got no other options. And then lastly, and I think ultimately this is what, for me, the film is about. It's about not allowing your past to dictate your future. You can change. You can. And you have to believe in that. And I showed in the film, hopefully, that, I was very honest, probably more honest than I should have been. And I've spoken about all of my mistakes and all of the things that I regret and the things that I found hard. not for sympathy, just to get people to understand that it was no joke. It wasn't that I just had a couple of beers and I didn't enjoy it. I was deep into it, and it was a very, very difficult space for me. And I hopefully have shown some evidence, or at least put some forward, that you can change. And yeah, there we go.
A really, really great message. So in terms of making the documentary and the process of making it, what was that like? And for Johnny specifically, how was it to revisit those days and your past and to talk about that?
That took me by surprise, I'm not going to lie. Again, just the way the room was set up. I had never worked with a filmmaker before. I'd worked with people that could make videos and videographers and all of those things, but I'd never worked with a filmmaker before, and that was the difference that I quickly learned about Ryan. Is that when I walked into that room, it was no joke. It was intense, and my heart started racing. You know, I've got a podcast. I've spoken about this on many other podcasts. I've spoken about it here with you two ladies, and you know, I feel like I'm okay with it. And then when I got into that environment and that light was shining on me. And then for people that haven't seen it yet, at the beginning, he brings out a bottle of wine and puts it in front of me. And it's like, oh, wow. I mean, I've got goosebumps now thinking about it. And it's quite the moment. So for me, it was a very intense experience. But ultimately, what the film has done, and I never, ever expected it to do this, is it's closed the loop for me.
Oh, wow.
It's closed the loop for me. And it's allowed me to kind of let go of it. It's like I didn't know it at the time, but when I was talking about that, it was arguably sort of the last time I was going to do that. And it was like that rumination had the opportunity to be closed, and I could finally let go of it and move on and stop asking myself, why did this happen and what was that about, and start saying, okay, what's next?
Amazing.
What's next? So you're sober, so what? Move on. You know, it's kind of...
That's amazing. I mean, Ryan, just hearing that must be really powerful for you as well, because you're saying that this is one of the first times you've done a documentary or done something in this style. So how was that whole experience for you?
I mean, Johnny's he only told me the other day that it kind of closed the loop for me, which is obviously extremely moving for me. Yes, I mean, it really is. The best case scenario, I think, when you make a documentary is that you're thinking about audience connection, and you know that people connect with what you're going to present them, because I mean, attention spans are constantly under attack these days due to our phones, and you know the way that content, you know, I use that word very loosely there, is designed to function, especially online. So you know, Johnny, I think Johnny had so much information to pass over. My main focus was kind of like, how can we tell the story and keep audiences engaged? So you're not really thinking about, you know, it sounds kind of strange, but I wasn't really thinking about how Johnny would be after the documentary. So that, what he's just said, matched with the kind of really positive audience feedback and connection is very moving for me, and is a sign of how we've made something more successful, I think, than either of us kind of anticipated. Because you know, like Johnny said, you know, when we approached the documentary, I had said to him, like, look, this is not, I kind of defined what my role was as a director and as a filmmaker to him, and I said, look, this is how we will approach it. You may have worked with other people in the past, things will be different. And I knew we had to put him under a bit of pressure. So there was a few things that I'd said to him before the weekend before. I was like, look, I know you don't drink anyway, but you know, you never know, maybe family members or people drink around him. And I was like, look, can you just not be around any alcohol the weekend before? Purposely keep your distance. And I said, I want you to think about the alcohol not as a substance, but as a person, which was kind of something I put to him, and he said, oh, okay. So when he came into the room, I knew he would be nervous, but to really drill down into his true feelings, we treated the bottle of wine that I got as a actual person. Wow. So it came into the room and it was put on the seat in front of him before we began. So he was face to face with his, I would say nemesis, but that's another thing that Johnny said, which I thought was so incredibly moving and refreshing, is that he didn't see it that way. It was a coping mechanism for him.
It was a good friend.
Yeah, a good friend, which I was like, that's the thing that really hooked me in working with him, is the way he spoke about it. Because obviously alcohol, I know a few people in bands that are now sober who obviously had big addiction issues, and they're very open about it, but it's been a real struggle for them to discuss, and they try and talk about it so their fan base understands that where they once were was not a good place, and they don't use it as an excuse, but that they try and talk about it with people. But no one has spoken about it in the way that Johnny has, and I think he's got this approach which is, devoid is a strong word, but he isn't looking at this devoid of shame. Like, he's not shaming himself and he's not shaming anyone else. And I know quite a few people who drink a lot, and the way he discussed the alcohol just unlocked this huge amount of empathy from me. Not that I don't have it anyway for anyone that has addiction struggles, but it unlocked this empathy in me, which I was like, my God, I've never thought of it this way. So the whole process has been incredible, and to hear Johnny say that for me is very moving, and it shows that we've made something that can do some good. And you always, with films and anything, I always say, look, if it inspires a few people, we've done a good job. But it seems to be growing. The effect is still growing, which is amazing.
And that's the power of a film. You're staying with us. We'll be back just after this. Welcome back to Mental Health Matters After Hours. We are really privileged to have Johnny Lawrence and Ryan Mackfall with us, talking about the documentary that they have recently released called The Slavery of Addiction, where Johnny shares his experiences with addiction and how he's been able to come through it. Now, I guess to both of you, the title, The Slavery of Addiction, is incredibly visceral. It's a very powerful title. First of all, Ryan, do you mind sharing about how that title was chosen? Maybe it was Johnny who wanted the title, but do you mind sharing about that? And then Johnny, do you mind sharing about where that slavery cycle, just getting pulled out, getting pulled back in, comes into it, please? So we'll start with Ryan.
It was actually, I cannot take any credit for the name, because Johnny came up with it. It was after the interview, and he was texting me on WhatsApp and said, look, I don't know what you think about this. Maybe it's a bit too strong, the slavery of addiction. And I said, well, no, that's what it is. And films need clear, concise titles when possible so the audience, it's the first point in contact for the audience, isn't it? The film name. So I said, no, I think if you're comfortable with that, then we should go with it. I think it's powerful. It says, it gives the kind of crux of the film. We just decided that was going to be the name for it.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. It gives the crux of the film. So for you, Johnny, that's being pulled back in, the cycle. I mean, that how do you sort of experience it, and how do you break it, I guess?
Well, I just want to go back to what Ryan was just saying. I think one of the things that was surprising to me was how uncomfortable that title made people feel, especially being a mixed race guy. There was all this sort of throwback to slavery, and it unearthed very difficult feelings for people. But then that's exactly what this is. This is an uncomfortable conversation, and that was kind of what I wanted, but I was also a little bit afraid of it because I didn't want to scare people off. So it was an interesting title, definitely. But going to answer your question, as we know, shame is a massive part of all of this, and shame will keep you silent. We have learned this over time. But what that does then is that leaves you with your own counsel, leaves you making your own decisions and making meaning out of things yourself. And understandably, this can result in perhaps your ego stepping in, seeking comfort, and doing that through the means of familiarity. So it's trying to take you back to what's familiar, and what's familiar is not good for you always. So there I am, trying to go sober, feeling really uncomfortable, finding it all really difficult. And guess what? There's this really comfortable, familiar feeling of drinking alcohol. And then people go, or you say to yourself, oh, it's not that bad. You'll be okay. You can just have one, blah, blah, blah. And all of these things come out. Before you know it, you're back where you started, maybe a little bit worse. Mm-hmm. So it is a real cycle. It is a trap because, if you don't know how to, for me anyway, if I don't know how to regulate my emotions, I have this thing that will absolutely do that for me. Mm. So and when I remove it, I have this really uncomfortable, very difficult experience with my emotions, and I want it to go away. And guess what? I know what will work, so I end up back there again, and I just get stuck in this cycle. Around and round I go until one day you find a way to step out of it.
Gosh, yeah, and on that, what helped you step out of it?
Yeah.
Was there any one thing, or was it a number of different things?
It's always going to be that compound effect, but ultimately, if I was to say it simply, I'd had enough pain. The way I was feeling, there's nothing I could have done as far as going sober or facing this thing that could have been worse than how I was feeling. I was feeling in a really, really bad place, and I knew that I had to face this thing. And when you go sober, there are two aspects to it that are important. One is obviously the abstinence of alcohol or whatever the addiction is. And the other one is dealing with the reasons why. And that's the hard bit. That's the bit that if you don't do that part, then you will probably go back to the thing that you were addicted to.
Yes, because those reasons are still going to be there, and that's the comfort blanket for it. Yeah. So let's go to Ryan first. How has the response to that documentary been for you as a filmmaker, as a different type of storyteller in many ways rather than documentaries? How has it been to you?
I think I'm always obviously excited by when release day comes, because I think it marks the moment where I can really let go of the project. And I really love watching audience reactions to stuff, whether it's a music video I've directed or a live show or short film, anything like that. It's very interesting for me to see how the audience connects and what they get from it. And I think because mental health stuff is so raw and often quite deeply connected to people's emotions, especially empathy, the reaction has been a lot more, I think a lot more, honest from people. I think Johnny has been sharing people's reactions on his Instagram story. And we've been looking at the comments from people, and it's like I said, it's new territory for me, but it's just been really it's been amazing to see them what people have been saying. They've been and encouraging them to, which I think is the best byproduct of it, to share their own stories and to share their struggles, because I think that's a big cornerstone of mental health, especially when you think about it, whether it's addiction or kind of mental health struggles with depression or whatever it might be. The sharing of the problem, or maybe that's not the right word for it, of the hurdle, helps people start down that road of recovery. And it's just a really amazing feeling to see so many brave people kind of talking about their own struggles, because I think when you share that stuff, it opens up a doorway to a different path, rather than shame and drinking and whatever it might be on your own, or it might be with other people trying to fit in. It's difficult to turn around and go, hey, you know what, I've got a problem, something has to change. And I think I've not had it with alcohol. I've never, when I was younger, I drank a bit more, but now I'm 41, so I don't really drink much anyway. And I've had my own mental health journey, which has been structured around breath work and therapy and also meditation. And that path for me has opened up a whole new POV of life itself, and I want to share that with people. And I see that with Johnny, and I think that's why we connected so well, is that Johnny is sharing his struggles and sharing his life with other people, so they can hopefully go on the same path. So for me, it's amazing, and I couldn't be happier. I think the results speak for themselves, and it's a real honour to be a part of this release and just what Johnny's doing.
And a credit to what you do through the arts, because I think the arts does have the power to broaden the reach of a very important experience. And just briefly to Johnny, you will be used to having people talk to you about, thank you for sharing this, but this is on a different scale to what you usually do. So how has it been for you?
Yeah, it's been incredible. I think I'll just echo what Ryan said. Hopefully it provides a language for people to be able to communicate. I believe that we organize our minds through conversation, and quite often that's not necessarily what you say to someone else, it's what you hear yourself say to somebody else, and you start to go, oh, okay, I didn't know I felt that way, and then you start piecing it together and organizing it and recognizing how you feel, validating how you feel, acknowledging how you feel. And that's the important part. I mean, YouTube is the place that we decided to put it, and that's a difficult space. It's a really difficult space. I don't understand how to make it work. It's hard, and we've put it out there, and I'm really pleased with the results so far. As Ryan pointed out earlier, it is something that's growing continuously all the time, every day. More and more views just rack up, and if I'm honest, I think I prefer that. I think it would have probably scared the life out of us both had we had turned up the next day and found that we had millions of views or something like that. I think we would have been a little bit overwhelmed by that. So we're quite happy that it didn't go that way. But everyone that's watched it has really taken the one thing that I hope they take in that is to look at it differently, whether it's them that has an addiction, and it again doesn't matter what that is, or whether it's a family member. What I ultimately want it to do is create a self-compassion and an empathy, and to get rid of this narrative that, and I get it, if you've got someone in your family that's struggling with addiction, it is hard. Sometimes it's really challenging to take that point of compassion and empathy, but realizing that this thing is something that you don't choose it. I think that's important. Yeah. I think that's very important, and to be able to look at it with empathy and compassion is vital. Absolutely vital.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. So the creative process between you, how did that work? And did you know straight away, well, you know what the story you wanted to tell, but did you know how you were going to do that straight away?
I've never worked with anybody like Ryan before. In fact, I said to Ryan, I think I've been looking for you for a very long time. Because I am a creative person, and I do challenge the way things are done. What I never want to do is be one of those people that watches a really cool reel and tries to imitate it myself. I don't want to be the second best version of anybody. I want to be the first best version of myself, So I just never knew how to do that. There was lots of parts of that process that I didn't know how to do. And when I met Ryan, he was like, yeah, it's easy. And I'm like, is it? And it turns out it kind of is. All I had to do was turn up and talk. And I say that, and obviously there were parts of that were difficult. But as far as the creativity, it was insane. It was one of the best experiences I think I've ever had. The things that he asked for, the B-roll, the photographs, the music, all of that, the way it was all put together was certainly nothing I expected, and it has surpassed what like I said, I'd never intended to make a documentary, and look where we are. So the whole creative process, as far as I was concerned, is one of the best experiences I think I've ever had in this sort of thing. So very grateful to him.
That's amazing. And Ryan, how does that feel hearing that?
Well, I'm very grateful. I'm one of the classic, what classic creative, artistic people, as soon as a compliment comes, it's like, oh my God, like
you're very
no,
modest.
I really appreciate it. And Johnny has fought hard against that part of me, and to really, you know, show his thanks, and I appreciate it. I mean, the creative process for us, I mean, with documentary, I kind of generally follow the same kind of process in one regard, but this was completely different. I mean, Johnny had some photos and a few bits, but we didn't have any archive footage or anything like that. And there's definitely, you know, when I knew that we had something that was around the 40-minute mark, I was like, okay, you know, we're going back to that problem that I spoke about earlier, which is like the attention spans, and how do we get people in that time space from the past that Johnny lived in? We actually ended up, well, I said to Johnny, I said, look, I think we're going to have to craft some images in Midjourney in AI. So that's something I have a lot of very mixed views about as a creator, because I think that AI is, you know, it's here, it's part of the world now, but I think it's something that needs to be approached with caution. You know, shouldn't, you know, the march of progress, as people will say, means, you know, there's a change in the way infrastructure works and industry. But for me, human connection is a very big part of my process, and I'm lucky to have such an incredible team of people around me that work with me. But with this one, we used Midjourney, and I kind of have used it a little bit. I mostly use it for the pitch process in films, you know, to create images or to push ideas. So I kind of took, you know, I probed Johnny's mind for like certain things from his childhood. You know, he described it to me, and then I kind of translated that into some form of AI image, which obviously isn't factually true, but it's putting the audience in that space of the specific moments. Like, you know, the moment with the post office and the elderly gentleman spitting in his mum's face, which was shocking. And, you know, that was a real moment that was quite upsetting to talk about. Not that we want an image of someone spitting in someone's face, but I wanted to put people like in the post office queue, you know, and those specific moments where we come off Johnny and we go to an image, or like younger Johnny sat in front of the TV watching, you know, whatever it was he was watching, cop dramas or anything like that. And I knew that we had to lean into some AI images, and also like the, you know, the 80s and 90s beer ads where we, you know, back then the alcohol was framed as a good time and your friend. And I kind of looked at old beer ads from that period and got Midjourney to recreate something and create this person, this idea of Johnny's friend. You know, it's the image of the guy with a beer in his hand smiling at him like, come on mate, let's have a beer, let's spend some time together, don't worry about the world. And Johnny kind of said something really, really powerful for me, which that it was like he was having an affair. So there was a couple images in there of him kind of like a shadowy younger Johnny with this entity, which was the alcohol, kind of having an affair with it. And those were the images that were I felt really would help communicate that as well. And I knew that the sound would be a big part of it as well. And the music was created by a couple friends of mine, Kate and Bob, who are absolutely incredible composers, and they kind of came in, took what I kind of gave them in terms of like ideas for music, and came back with a score that was absolutely amazing. So I've got to say a big thank you to Kate Hiley and Bob Matthews, who just were amazing. Wow, absolutely amazing. But the whole process was, Johnny gave me so much freedom, and I think sometimes that makes it so much easier, because I'm at the point in my career now where I'm looking to work with people. Obviously we need input, and you work with execs or people that kind of have strong ideas that you need to kind of kowtow the line to. but Johnny gave me so much freedom, and he just allows me to do what I do, you know. And it's difficult sometimes for people to just step out the way and say, go for it. But that's exactly what Johnny did, and credit to him for that. You know, he's involved in the process, he fed back, but he let me do what I do. So the creative process it was kind of easy.
I love that. I love that. Oh my goodness. You're staying with us. We'll be back just after this. A world without the arts is one without confidence, creativity and community. And yet funding has been reduced every year. Arts programmes have been shown to benefit social inclusion and well-being, particularly for marginalised groups, with projects fostering a sense of belonging, cultivating mutual understanding and breaking down social barriers and isolation. Participation in arts programmes can help boost confidence and open doors to opportunities that may otherwise be inaccessible. Click Arts Foundation offers grants up to £2,000 for grassroots arts projects twice a year, with our community arts experience trustees meticulously scoring each project on impact and sustainability. To date, we have supported craft and visual arts projects, dance, drumming for well-being, and preservation of heritage and culture. If you share our passion, not just for maintaining the arts themselves, but contributing to the many benefits it can bring, please consider making a donation to Click Arts Foundation registered charity. We're very privileged to have Johnny Lawrence and Ryan Mackfall with us. They have just released The Slavery of Addiction, which is Johnny's experiences with alcohol and his experiences throughout his childhood and how he came through breaking that cycle of addiction. So Johnny, just to take away from the documentary for a moment, how did your experiences growing up affect you as a parent?
You've probably heard, well, you will have heard about push motivation and pull motivation in life. And I always felt pushed by fear to be a parent. Was very reactive, very sort of allowed the situations and the things that occur naturally within a family to dictate what I did next. And that was done out of fear, desperation, stress, self-hatred, all of those different things. And what's great about being sober now is that I get to have this pull motivation. I get to lead my life via my values, that self-validation of the person who I want to be in life and have become. And it was only with a conversation with my brother not so long ago, we were talking and I was talking about the person I want to become, and he starts laughing and I thought he was mocking me, and he says, no, you've been that person for a very long time. And I was just like, whoa. Oh, okay.
That's amazing.
And my wife and kids are very kind, and luckily, I made this decision early on in their life. I was never a violent or aggressive. It's not in me to be that way. But I suppose the big thing for me is that, and it's the whole thing around any addiction, is what it means to you. Because there'll be people that tell you, I've had doctors when I was a drinker tell me that they drink more than that, so that I haven't got a problem.
Gosh.
It's happened.
Yeah.
Gosh. But for me, it's about how you feel about it. And although I might not have been your classic bad parent, I wasn't showing up the way I wanted to show up. I didn't want to be the guy that wakes up on Sunday and doesn't go to rugby because he's got a hangover. And his son wants to score tries and watch him. I don't want to be that guy ever. And now, I don't know if it's good, bad, sad, whatever, but my favorite part of the week is watching my son play rugby. It's literally my son said to me, really? it's like, you must have a very boring week. I was like, no, you're just very good at rugby. So.
Oh, wow.
Oh, I love that. Oh, bless him. I love that. And something that you said earlier in our interview, Johnny, was so powerful, that in doing the documentary, and I know you've been doing so much internal work with your own processing, you help other people process, but in this documentary, you close that loop, which is just so powerful. What can we learn from you about processing those emotions, no matter how difficult?
I think the big one is to face the truth. Not what you want to be true, not what you prefer to be true, not what you hope is true, what is true. Now, it's only when you do that can you truly own it, and it's only when you own it can you decide to change it. You can't change it if you don't own it first. And for me, my addiction was about learning how to have my emotions so that I could get to know myself and learn to like myself. I sometimes struggle with this whole love yourself movement. I think if you've been practicing self-loathing for 20 years, just overnight decide to love yourself is a bit much.
Yeah.
But I think it starts with getting to know yourself and then getting to like yourself, like any person you would see. You know, you don't just instantly love somebody when you first meet them. You might think you do, but you don't. You know, you don't know anything about them. So it's about learning about yourself, so that you can get to like yourself, and then stop punishing yourself with this addiction or whatever it is, this way of escaping how you don't want to feel through whatever it is that you're doing. And you know, Ryan mentions affairs. That is an addiction in a sense. You know, you become addicted to. And again, this is the message. It's not about what you're addicted to. It's about how it makes you feel. It's about how it makes you feel, and that's what you're chasing. You know, that's what you're chasing, that feeling, because the rest of the time you feel awful. I would sit up till 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, because I didn't want to go to sleep, wake up and feel the way I usually feel. So, but now I don't have that problem, thankfully. So there you go.
Yeah, gosh.
Fantastic.
Wow.
Ryan, this question's for you. You did touch on this before. Is this the type of documentary that you would usually make? And kind of attached to that, how do you approach telling the story with the compassion and the humanity that you clearly do?
As a director, I try not to pigeonhole myself. Like, a lot of my work does come from the music industry, but the kind of directors who influence me, one of them is David Fincher, and I'd say he's a director that is, you know, multidisciplined. So that's kind of where I've been looking to hone my skills, so I can just, you know, improve and take on the challenges that come in. You know, should I find that it's a project or a topic that I do want to cover. So you know, the base documentary, the base approach of making a documentary for me is I always have my method, but you never really know what you're going to get. And you know, to move into the second kind of part of your question, I count myself as a empath and a sensitive person. I mean, that's what makes me an artist. And as a director, you know, you need to, you have to be that way to assimilate stories and things and decide how that needs to be translated into an image on the screen. You know, and you have to work with people in your team. So you've got to find the best route to describe and break down something for someone else who's working with you. So you make sure you're all on the same kind of page. You know, Johnny's story touched me, like I said, from our first kind of Zoom call together and going over things, and that's normally a signal for me that there's something there that I do want to work on, because as I move forward in my career, I'm also understanding that my creative energy is not, you know, it's not unlimited. It's the well does run dry sometimes. So it's picking the right things to work on, and stuff where I feel my energy will be utilized and also, you know, it'll be worth something. You know, so Johnny's story is something that, you know, I wanted to connect with and do, and I knew that we would need a certain amount of sensitivity. But to be honest with you, you never know what you're going to get in an interview with someone. True. And Johnny came prepared. I had just very minor prompts for him to tell the story, which is refreshing. I could concentrate on listening to what he was saying. There was only me and one of my cinematographers was in the room as well, a guy called Sam Breeze, who shot it with me. So we kept the footprint small. Johnny had the chance to privately discuss this, although it ends up not being private, but the actual means of discussion, you know, feeling like it's a safe environment for him. Yes. So it was very straightforward. I think it's just having empathy and kindness, which I think, you know, the world needs, especially right now.
Absolutely, yeah. And that definitely comes across as well. So this is for both of you. What's next for you both, and where can we watch the film?
You can watch the film on YouTube, on the Self Development Coach channel. It's very easy to find. It should be somewhere near the top, hopefully, if I've done it right. But what's next for me? Interestingly enough, I just come back from Kilimanjaro, and I had a very interesting experience. I failed. I didn't get to the top, and life forced me to choose failure, which was a very profound lesson for me because I've always been a little bit scared of failure. Therefore, sometimes I don't do the things that I really want to do because I don't want to risk that failure. And having to choose failure, having to realize that I had severe altitude sickness, worse than I've ever had, and that I wasn't going to be able to make it to the top, and I had to choose to not go up there. I realized that I was more scared of failing than I was of trying to keep climbing, which doesn't make a lot of sense. So I chose failure, which meant that I'm going to step forward and be a little bit more brave with my career and the things I want to do. So I've just gone for a rebrand, and I've now got a new website, johnnylawrence.co.uk. I'm launching I'm taking a fresh rebrand on the podcast, and I'm leaning into my name, which is Johnny Lawrence, and it's now the Johnny Lawrence podcast. It's not because I'm a huge narcissist, I promise. It's more because we worked out that due to the search engine that people didn't know that it was called the Self-Development Podcast, and they would search Johnny Lawrence podcast.
Yeah.
And also I have this ongoing constant battle with Cobra Kai, Netflix, and Karate Kid. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not changing my name for you. I'm going to reclaim my name. So there you go. So yeah, so there's the johnnylawrence.co.uk, where I've got a lot more speaking services now, a lot more educational services where I go and speak to many. You know, I've said to you before that my mission is to help as many people as I can with their self-development. And it was a bit slow doing it one-to-one. So I thought I better find a way to do it another way. So that's what I'm doing. And the new podcast, Johnny Lawrence Podcasts, which, I'd love you to check out.
Amazing. We'll have those links with the show notes. And for you, Ryan?
I'm actually here in Glasgow at the minute. So I've got a film coming out tomorrow at Glasgow Film Festival.
Oh, fantastic.
I've got a short film. My next short film's coming out. It's called The Bird Watcher. So it's got its world premiere here tomorrow, and it starts its festival journey. So we're excited to see where this goes now. So that's kind of what's next for me.
Amazing. Oh my goodness. We could speak to you all day.
Yeah.
Thank you both so much.
you.
It's been such a pleasure. Please do join us on the show again.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And let's head over to Test the Trend. I'm often asked about a practical way to change our habits of doom scrolling and looking at our phone. And as today has been about changing habits, I thought I'd give you this little tip. I use an app blocker. I use a little bit of external help. So I used to be doom scrolling all the time. I'd look at my phone and then just get distracted, probably because I didn't want to carry on with what I was doing. But using an app blocker, it's just a simple free download. It tells me the times I can set to stop myself looking at certain apps, and I take off the social media apps, Facebook and LinkedIn and the like. And every time I go onto the app, it will tell me quite passive aggressively, stop checking this app and go and do something more productive instead. And then it will also tell me you've tried to open this app 300 times today. And that began to show me how bad my habits really were. So it's simply called App Blocker. It's free. It's downloadable. Give it a go and see what happens. And we're also lucky to have a story from one of our resident experts, Dr. Gus Chaves. He talks about how sometimes when you need to make changes, you're the one that needs to take the first step. Let's go over to Dr. Gus.
So there's a concept that I sometimes talk to my clients about, which is called nobody's coming. And as harsh as it can sound, what it means is that it's up to the person to get themselves out of that difficult situation. And I always bring up this scene from the Harry Potter movies or books. On the third one, Harry is by a pond, and there are like several dementors sucking his life out of him, and he is saved by a spell that was cast by somebody in the woods, and it has a shape of a stag. It's an expecto patronum. Somebody cast this spell, and he was saved because of this spell. Later on in the movie, he realizes his friend Hermione has this little thing that allows her to go back in time. So she takes him back in time with her, and they're into the woods, and he's watching himself being, having his life sucked out by the Dementors, and he's waiting to see who was the person who cast the spell and saved him. And he can still see himself suffering from afar, and he has nothing to do, nobody shows up, and then he goes in there, he jumps in and casts the spell himself. So that part of the film alone, or the book alone, represents what the nobody's coming means. If you don't stand up and do it for yourself, nobody else will. Crutches do not walk. You can rely on friends, therapists, family, but they can only give you support. You still have to take the first step.
What a show.
Fantastic.
Definitely watch the documentary. We do have the links in the show notes. There's so much to take away from that. What are some of your key things?
There was a huge amount to take away from that, but I think the main message that came from Johnny was accept yourself and move on, and don't wallow or don't get bogged down in the shame. That was such an important message that came through from what he was saying.
Because that's the only way you can move through.
Yes.
Yeah, and then I guess for me, it was from Ryan, it's the power of a film.
Yes.
But I did not even think that the power of a film for the person who's the subject of it can be such a healing experience as well. To have Johnny say it closed the loop.
That was so powerful. And for Ryan, that must have been one of the best things that you can ever get from making a film, can't it?
Oh my goodness. Well, we thank you for tuning in, and from Jude and I, have a good night.